Hello, welcome to Tasting with Matt and Mike. I'm Mike Veach, and this is Matt Kohorst, my partner in crime. And this is going to be the third part of our Stitzel-Weller challenge. What we're trying to do is find the wheated bourbon that tastes most like the traditional 1960s Old Fitzgerald made at Stitzel-Weller. And this week we're going to taste it against Larceny, made by Heaven Hill, and the David Nicholson, which is from Luxrow Distillery. The only thing is, though, these might be fairly similar because Luxrow may still be sourcing their whiskey from Heaven Hill because their distillery hasn't been open that long. So it'll be interesting to see how much difference there is between those two and the Stitzel-Weller.
Oh, okay, that's exciting.
You know, the one thing is, though, maybe, and I'm not sure about this, maybe Steve Beam or somebody from Luxrow will tell me, are they getting this David Nicholson contract distilled by Heaven Hill using their own recipe? Or are they just buying the Heaven Hill wheated bourbon that they use for Old Fitzgerald?
Okay.
So, you know, there's possibilities in
Okay.
it. So, let's get the...
Never sorry to have this poured in my glass.
Yes.
This is really good stuff.
You know, this is just our excuse for drinking the rest of this bottle. So, let's renew our acquaintance with this bourbon.
It's been a whole week.
It's been a whole week. Like I said, oh man, that vanilla, caramel, ripe apple, little hazelnut. I mean, it's all right there. It's like a candied apple in a glass.
Yeah.
Very tasty.
At this point, I feel spoiled
Yeah.
doing this every week with the Venetian. It's it's exactly what you'd like bourbon to taste like. Well, at least for me, you know.
It is. I mean, it is the classic flavor. That's why we want to find what can you get nowadays that tastes most like this.
Right.
So let's try it with the cranberry just to renew our acquaintance. Oh, that's just so good. That really brings out that apple and that caramel. You know, a little pepper spice.
A little peppery, yeah. A little twinge of pepper right there at the finish. Yeah, but the apple definitely. I get a lot of apple with the cranberry.
And let's try it with a little pecan. And that just really brings out the caramel, vanilla, the oak. A little spicier, but it's more baking spices than peppery spices. Just really good with
Slight hint of chocolate there, just
a little chocolate.
Slight hint, yeah.
So now we're going to the Heaven Hill, the Larceny.
So at the Larceny.
It's the same recipe that they were making when they at Stitzel-Weller and Bernheim when they sold the recipe to Heaven Hill, with one exception. Heaven Hill raised the barrel entry proof to 125. So it went from 115 or so to 125 at Heaven Hill. But the big difference here is also going to be 107 barrel entry proof versus 125.
Okay, and that's a 90. Is that 92?
92 proof. So it's a little less proof than the bottled and bond that we're...
So that means that's a good cut, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, and going from 125 to 92 is adding a lot more water than going from 107 to 100.
Right, yeah.
But they're both probably about the same age. I imagine the Larceny's, 4 to 6 year old whiskeys.
Okay.
So it might not be quite as old as the...
Okay.
So the nose is kind of similar.
It is.
You get that vanilla, you get that caramel, you get that You know, that real ripe apple.
It's just a little less so, maybe?
A little less so.
And what was the proof on this one?
92, and that's 100 bottle
100,
bond.
okay. 100, yeah, bottom bond. Okay, yeah, it's very similar, though.
It's similar.
Just muted. I'm not getting quite as much like apple.
Yeah, it's like everything's been muted down.
Mm-hmm.
Watered down.
Watered down.
You know, and I think it has a lot to do with the fact that, you know, I went in a barrel 125. After 4 or 5 years, it's probably up to about 130, depending on where it is in the warehouse.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then you bring it down to 92. You're adding basically 19% water.
Wow.
Whereas this is, you know, went in at 107. Maybe after 6 years, it's up to, you know, 115. You're dropping it down to 100. You're adding 7% water.
There you go. So you're just getting the flavors from the barrel and the aging process.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good, but it's thin.
It's a little thin. It's a little more chocolatey than and even with the nose, I'm not getting the fruit as much.
No.
It's more like that caramel chocolate, which is still good.
Yeah.
Still a good. I would say it's still a good.
It's a good whiskey.
Yeah.
You know, I like the Larceny.
Yeah.
But it's not this.
Right. Yeah. It's not complex like the
no, it's not near as complex. You're not getting that leather. You get a nice leathery note to it.
And the finish is a little bit bland, short.
Yeah, this is much shorter
comparatively.
finish.
Yeah.
Well, let's see what a cranberry does for it. See if a cranberry will breathe a little life into it.
It didn't give the apple like the Venetian. It gave me more of a citrus, a good orange citrus.
But one thing it does have in common with the Old Fitzgerald, I'm getting a little peppery finish.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Hits you like right there. Yeah, I mean it's still good.
It's good.
But but just like with the cran, I didn't get the complexity that I wanted from it.
So let's try it with the pecan. You know, I think the pecan kind of washes everything out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not getting much of anything other than just a little bit of wood, maybe just a hint of sweetness.
Yeah.
But the pecan, really, I'm kind of disappointed in the Larceny with the pecan.
Right. Yeah. I think for the Larceny, I would go either neat or with some kind of fruit. You know.
Yeah.
I guess that would be a good old fashioned, right?
Right, a good old fashioned.
Yeah. Still a really good whiskey, but you know we're comparing it to you know the Venetian. You know, so.
Well, let's compare it side by side with the Venetian decanter.
Okay.
The nose is much more complex with the Venetian decanter.
It is
much sweeter, and frankly, it's more full-bodied in the nose.
It definitely is. Yeah.
I mean,
you can almost smell the wood in that. You know, like.
So let's take a little sip of the Venetian. And then a little sip of the you can tell they're related, but it's a distant relation.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely you can tell that it's been watered down a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit too much.
Yeah.
So
like I said, this will be an interesting with the David Nicholson.
Yeah. I was going to ask you before we got to that. So how much would you pay for this at the store? Do you know the price?
I think it's like $35.
$35.
Like that.
Okay.
And that's about the same price as this.
That's not bad.
Yeah,
I mean
they're very reasonable.
Yeah.
You know.
I've had some of that, but it's been a couple years, I think, since then.
Okay. Well, this will be interesting because if they're sourcing it, from Heaven Hill, if this whiskey was sourced from Heaven Hill, like I said, they've only had their own distillery now for like 3 or 4 years, so this is not going to be their own juice yet.
Right. But they do source from Heaven Hill.
Right, but is it contract distilled or is it just simply Larceny at 100 proof?
Nope. We'll see.
This is what we're going to find out.
It's a little higher proof. You know,
yeah, even if it is just Larceny at 100 proof, that might make a big difference in the...
So is that a bottled and bond there?
No, it's not bottled and bond.
Okay.
Since they didn't make it themselves, they're not going to do a bottled and bond.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Okay. So it's a straight.
But it also could mean that this could be a mixture of 4, 5, 6 year old whiskey too. Mm-hmm. That's the bad thing about bottled and bond. It all has to be from the same season. This can have multiple years of whiskey in it.
So you can blend it, to your liking.
So, let's see what the nose is. I'm getting a little more fruit on this. But it's interesting. It's not necessarily apple. It's kind of a sweet, I don't know, what would you think? Apricot or peach or plums?
I would say more towards the plum.
Plum? Or maybe even like, maybe it's a pitted fruit like a cherry or a date or...
Yeah. I'm having a hard time getting a lot out of the nose.
Well, let's take a sip and see. A little more complex than the Larceny, not near as complex as the Venetian decanter.
Tastes for me it tastes pretty different. It is more complex, but it really doesn't taste very much like the Venetian to me.
No, it doesn't. It's got more of a I call it a kind of a cornbread dough.
Yeah.
Taste to it. Very yeasty.
Very yeasty. I'm almost getting like more of a cinnamony than a pepper spice on it. Still pretty good.
Yeah, but it is different from the Larceny and the Venetian. So maybe they are contract distilling and doing it to their own specs.
Maybe so. Yeah, which is interesting. At least they're doing their own thing with it. They're not just
right.
Straight just taking the juice. But try with a cran.
Yeah, let's try it for cranberry, see what it does.
Lemony. I got a little lemony.
Yeah. A little lemon, a little spice.
A little spice. It kind of took that cinnamon away. Gave it more of that Venetian spice.
Yeah, or like a cardamom, that kind of a citrusy, spicy.
Yeah. So I would say that, like, with the cran, it got maybe a little closer than the Larceny did.
Yeah.
But upon the neat, I don't think the neat really did.
Yeah.
So, interesting.
Let's see what a pecan does for it.
I like it with the pecan.
Yeah.
I do. It's giving me that, like, kind of like that.
It's
that
giving a little more spice, a little more caramel,
a
little chocolate. Particularly, the chocolate's really on the finish.
Yeah. Like it's still there. It's sitting right there. Yeah, I really like that. Yeah. So what would you do with that? If it's good with the pecan, if it's really good with the pecan.
I'd be tempted to use this in something, maybe like a whiskey sour, because it's got that kind of a citrus note to it anyway.
Yeah. It would work well with the lemon juice. Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna cleanse my palate.
All right. The big test.
And let's try it side by side with the Venetian. Sip of the Venetian. Well, I have to say, straight up, they're just nowhere near alike. I think the pecan does bring out some of the Venetian decanter stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But, yeah.
I would say, like, yeah, I'm with you on that. Which one would be closest?
You know, I think straight up I'd have to go with the Larceny.
I think so too. Yeah. But I will say, like, I did like the Nicholson
With the pecan.
overall, maybe a little, yeah.
A little bit more.
A little bit more with the pecan and maybe with the cran.
Yeah.
But I think the Larceny, which I'm kind of a neat drinker,
And,
I would take the Larceny probably
right.
first.
But I will have to say right now is that I don't think the Larceny beats out the Wilderness Trail as
No.
being close. So I would
No.
still say that right now our
Right now,
conclusion is that 6-year-old bottled and bond Wilderness Trail is the closest that you get to the Venetian decanter.
Yeah. So if you want something more of a classical taste in your bottle, I think you got to go with that 6-year-old
Wilderness Trail.
Wilderness Trail.
And the big difference between that and a lot of the other products that are out there is that you can find it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's a reasonable price.
It's a reasonable price.
But if you can't get the Wilderness Trail, I would have to say the Larceny is not a bad.
No. And I would say, like like this one, you said this one's like 35.
Yeah.
I think Wilderness is, up there at 60.
40, 45, 50, 60,
Yeah,
somewhere
I
along
think
there.
Yeah, and the 6-year-old I think is, maybe
Even
up there
more,
a little
yeah.
more. So, if you're on a little bit of a budget, you got $35. I would go with the Larceny if you want,
Right.
Yeah. A really good whiskey, I don't know, are we going to do another part, or are we...
We got one more part for scheduled where we're going to do some out-of-state weeded bourbons.
Yeah.
The Wyoming whiskey and the Finger Lakes weeded bourbon. Both of them should be very interesting to see.
Yeah.
So, until the next time, cheers.